We welcome you once again to Economic Forum, where we discuss various issues affecting our economy in Zimbabwe. Recently, the head of state, His Excellency President Mnangagwa, introduced performance contracts among top government officials, starting off with permanent secretaries and then quite recently with ministers. These contracts are meant to measure performance, especially in service delivery. And today we're going to unpack that so that we fully understand the purpose of these performance contracts. And we've invited Mr. Luxson Zembe, who is a specialist in leadership and governance issues. And we call him a leadership and governance strategist. Welcome to Economic Forum.
Thank you.
Now, if you could just begin by defining what performance contracts are.
It is an agreement between two or more people, or even between organizations, which defines the work that needs to be done, the results that need to be achieved, and the performance indicators, what will show that things are being done accordingly and that the desired results are being achieved. And lastly, also the monitoring and the evaluating process to say, how do we monitor and how do we evaluate when we'll be looking at the various performance indicators that will show us that this is what is happening. Just like, let me use a very practical example, a motor car. That's why it has got a dashboard. And when you are driving, when you look at the dashboard, there's a speedometer which measures, how fast you are traveling. And that's very important, and that's exactly what happens in any job. We should have that dashboard that shows us how are we doing, how are we performing.
Having said that, why do you think it has come at this time in the Second Republic?
Okay, very important. I mean, performance management contract in the civil service started around 1960s, and France pioneered this. Okay. And if you look at all the countries, I think in Africa it was Kenya around about 2004, okay, which really pioneered these performance management contracts for civil service. And if you look at all these countries and a lot of other countries throughout this various period, the reason why eventually countries begin to end up saying, let's adopt a performance management contract, is because there will be certain pressures, there will be certain developments. And this is part of a developmental process. And I know people sometimes they ask, but why have we not been doing it all along? There is always a starting point. It's a developmental process, and if you cannot change the way you have been doing things, it means either you are stagnant or you are rotting. And we've seen the challenges that have been happening within the civil service and everybody complaining about the quality of service in the civil service. That's number one. Number two, the president is a performance management contract, if you didn't know. His manifesto that brought him into power is a performance management contract. Next year, 2023, we're back to elections and there will be an evaluation by the public. You promised us, we agreed, and we elected you into power, and you said you're going to deliver this. Did you deliver? For instance, okay, that's the president. Number one, as a country, we have the National Development Strategy 1, okay, which is our strategic document. Right? That sets, again, very important, it's a performance management contract targeting our Vision 2030, upper middle income economy by the year 2030. It's a performance management contract. For us to achieve that vision, we need to perform. And there are clear, specific elements, components in all aspects of our economy included in that document, and results and outcomes which we must achieve in order to become. That's important.
That was Mr. Luxson Zembe explaining performance contracts, which were introduced by His Excellency, the President, to permanent secretaries to begin with, and then to ministers, so that their performance is measured whether annually or biannually, whatever target it is that is going to be explained by Mr. Zembe. So join us in the second segment. Welcome to the second segment, where we are discussing performance contracts which were entered into by His Excellency the President together with his permanent secretaries as well as ministers in order to measure their performance in service delivery. We've got Mr. Luxson Zembe here, who is helping us to unpack what could have been in the mind of His Excellency in order to come up with these performance contracts. If you'd like to get in touch with us about our programs, you can do so on the numbers that are showing on your screen. And also, if you have missed some episodes, you can view them on our YouTube channel, which is Economic Forum Zimbabwe. Now, Mr. Zembe, let's go back to the results-based management, which now is called the integrated results-based management. I'm sure that's the one that is going to be used quite extensively in the measurement of the performance of the ministers and permanent secretaries and other top government officials. I know at the last time even the Reserve Bank governor signed these contracts, and it's going to cascade down even to the other senior ranks. So the integrated results-based management vis-a-vis performance contracts.
Thank you. It's important. I think those who have been in management, leadership, and organizations for a long time, they know that we used to have what was called the MBO, management by objectives, where companies, organizations would set objectives or targets for individuals. In their individual right, in your own job, we then set targets, what is required for you to achieve, and we just measure you as an individual. It progressed and developed into a results-based management, where we're saying the whole management system must now be focused on results. How do we achieve the desired results? So it begins to impact on management. In other words, management, results-based management that is targeted at results, which then started bringing in the planning, component of this whole system, which is then now transformed into integrated results-based management. And what is it all about? It has got about 4 components. The first component is the strategic planning, which is our NDS1, which is the overall strategy with its strategic goals and objectives. Then arising out of that is this next component, which is critical, are the people competencies. Because for you to execute that strategy, you need certain competencies, certain skills. We're not talking about skills, we're talking about what I am capable of doing and achieving. And that's important. Okay, so we then
and that's all monitored.
Yes, and we then look at that, and that's very important in terms of that. The next component of that process looks at cascading, right, this to all the various levels of the organization, which is very important. It's no longer focusing on an individual, it's a systems approach.
While explaining that, it is very important that that document that you've just referred to, the NDS1, is not only for top officials, even those under them should understand it, which means an organization has to explain it so that when they are performing, they are not left behind, as the lowest levels, but we are moving together.
That's very true. And the last component there, which just before I come to that, I wanted to explain was the monitoring and evaluation component, to say, how do we, across the whole system, from top to bottom, that's now coming to your point, okay, that this is a systems approach of ensuring that, one, if you're starting at the top, we have what the organization wants to achieve. Then you move in at an operational level. If there are divisions, departments, they feed into the organization, overall organizational. And then you go to individuals. They must be aligned So the principle of alignment becomes very critical. And then thirdly, it must cascade to the whole system, right to the bottom person, including the sweeper. All right? They must have their integrated results-based, contract. In other words, we are employing to be a sweeper. What do we expect you to do? And how well should you sweep? And we can measure, even this floor can be measured in terms of how well it has been swept from a qualitative point of view. The integration, it's saying it's bringing the whole system from top to bottom, everybody aligned in the system, and they all feed in, right, into the various levels of the organization, right up to feeding to the overall arcing organizational goals that we want to be able to do. That's why it's integrated, and integrated as well in the sense that it brings in the remuneration or reward component into it as well. Because, and that's fundamental now for the civil service. It's a total culture change, a transformation.
If not cultural overhaul.
It is an overhaul of the system. And we have had people saying, hey, you've got a civil service mentality. Oh, you've got a civil service culture. And generally, when people are referring to that, they are referring to a lax 6-day, culture where anything goes. Fine, I've gone to the work. Really, all I need to do is to just make sure that the register has been ticked. But at the end of the day, to say, but what did I spend the day doing? And what it is bringing now is a fundamental principle that people are not paid for occupying a job. People are not paid for job titles. People are not paid for various activities. People are paid for producing results and contributing to the organizational performance. And that's why now it's a culture change from where we just say, yes, people are paid. For instance, in the civil service, if you want to get more money, just go to school. And this is why you find 90% of civil servants spend most of their time on qualifications, learning, and everything. Education is nothing but a tool, period. You don't pay people for tools, for having tools, for carrying tools. You don't pay your electrician for coming with a box full of tools. No, you pay them for performing a job and sorting out your problems and fixing up your things.
Mr. Luxson Zembe, emphasizing that what is important in our jobs are results and not just the qualifications. So those qualifications must be used in order to produce results. That's Economic Forum today with Luxson Zembe, who is a leadership and governance strategist, where we are unpacking the performance contracts that were introduced by His Excellency the President, starting with the permanent secretaries and then the ministers and other senior government officials. Join us in the third and final segment. Welcome to the third and final segment of Economic Forum, where today we are discussing with Mr. Luxson Zembe about the performance contracts which were introduced by His Excellency the President, starting with the permanent secretaries and moving on to the ministers. He is helping us to understand what could have been in the mind of the head of state in order to make sure that service delivery is improved across the board. Now, Mr. Zembe, you were explaining about the importance of qualifications as a tool, but not as the end-all. And that at the world of work, we have to look at the results. And you were emphasizing that results are very important when we were talking about the integrated results-based management.
True.
But in order to have that culture of producing results, how does it begin at home? Where as a young Luxson Zembe, you are taught how to evaluate yourself, how to look into the future and so forth. Is it a culture that we have here in Zimbabwe?
It's very important. It's a culture that we had. Zimbabweans were an international brand par excellence. Okay. Up until late, we now have a generation of Zimbabweans that have now soiled or spoiled that brand.
In what
We're
way?
known for performing. We're known as people who perform, people who are disciplined, people who deliver results. And this is why go all over the world and look at Zimbabweans and what they are doing and how they were sought after, right? And that was because of a certain culture, a culture that started even at home. And that's very important, that's fundamental. When I was growing up, my mom and dad were teachers. And they taught me, and they taught us as children to perform. They taught us that at home, you want to eat, you must cook. You want to sleep somewhere else nice, you must clean it. You want to have clean clothes, you must learn how to wash it. You want to eat, vegetables, you must grow them. That's a culture of performance. If I want to look for employ somebody who is very responsible, disciplined, guess what? Okay, I go for a child that was raised by Mbuya or Gogo in the rural areas. Let's take, for instance, the current problem that we have in terms of prevalent use of drugs amongst our young people, which is very important. It's an unfortunate development because that destroys our culture of work ethic, whereby these youngsters or even adults, and by the way, it's not just young people, it's prevalent right across, including adults, which were having challenges in terms of these drugs. They give us a false impression, things are okay, things are not okay. And because there are other people who can destroy our culture of work ethic, that brand which I talked about, which was the Zimbabwean brand, an international par excellent brand, which we had and which we were known for. And we need to reclaim that brand status, what we call brand loyalty or brand integrity in terms of as Zimbabweans. And this is why we are saying if we need to guard against people who may want to bring in these things that will spoil our brand integrity and our brand image. And this is why the new curriculum is very good, it's very important. It's to bring back that culture, to realign us with what NDS1 is talking about, transformative performance-oriented culture that we need to introduce. And the new curriculum is also trying to align with that. What is important is how do we introduce it, infuse it in our system in a manner that actually enables us to achieve the best results. So that's what we are trying to do as a country. We are trying to transform our culture so that in the public service, like Kenya I've talked about, started on this in Africa. We've got a very shining example, Rwanda. Okay.
Well, it's interesting talking about Rwanda because at one point the government actually invited a very senior official from Rwanda to come and address our top officials here about how they were doing things. So it's important to share some of these examples. We're talking about Rwanda.
Rwanda is a darling to those who love performance, to those who love to see a performance-oriented culture. When I went there, okay, and I went into, for instance, their agents that deals with new business investments and all the like. Starting from the time you register, fill the forms and everything and all the like, within 5 hours, you've registered, you've gone through all the form filling, you've done all the interviews, everything, your company is registered. As long as you've got all your things in them. 5 hours.
Is it still taking long here in Zimbabwe before you go further?
Yes. It's still taking long.
Okay.
Longer than what is wanted because we are competing with the rest of the world. And there's a lot of frustration that people go through, right? And it's prevalent even both locally and even international visitors in terms of what is coming through. And one of the challenges obviously they face and the culture of performance which also is trying to address one of the ills that is in our system now of corruption, right? And the performance-based management culture will try and address this issue of corruption. The reason why it's taking so long, the reason why there are challenges is because of corruption. And let me also add, from a civil service point of view, besides paying for qualifications, which you must stop, right? Paying for qualifications. If you have got a degree, produce results equivalent to a degree, and we'll pay you more. If you have got a doctorate, produce results equivalent to a doctorate, and we'll pay you equivalent to a doctorate. We don't pay you just because you're a doctor. And that culture must change. And that's the difference between the public service and business organization. In a business organization, for instance, in our business, okay, all I want is somebody who can perform and deliver the results. When I went to Singapore, it was very interesting, right? That most qualified people would stampede to go into civil service. The performance management contracts, well rewarded for that, and which is very important. Then, so good rewards are very important for the system, for sustainability. And the next one is very important. We need to depoliticize the civil service. Currently, we have got a lot of political, right, appointments in the civil service. People who spend their day and their time following rallies. The rallies are for the president, right? And not civil servants. They are not for rallies. And president must chase them away. In fact, there was a time when he said, I don't want to see all these heads of ministries following after rallies. Excellent president, Mr. President. Stop all civil servants from following up rallies. They must be performing. And that's the culture of performance. So we need to depoliticize the civil servants so that they know that theirs is not, they are politicians, that's their business. They are there to deliver service to the generality of Zimbabweans, to the public. And they must be in the office, they must be at their workstation and do the job.
Mr. Zembe, finally, the media. The media does cover the performance of different civil servants, but others are not that visible. Say something about how that affects monitoring and evaluation vis-a-vis the coverage of different projects by different government departments and ministries. Very briefly.
Yes, that's very important. I think the media has got a critical role in terms of, monitoring, evaluation, flagging up, encouraging, motivation, recognition. And it's important for the media to make sure that in their coverage, they are inclusive, they cover even work that is actually going on, that is being performed at all systems. Let's flag it up. And what I would encourage the president to do is like what President Kagame does. On a particular day, in the year, they go into Rainbow Towers, all the ministers up front, tell the nation, what did you do? Here was the performance contract for this year. What did you achieve? How did you score? And let them ask you, let them rate you. And their ministers who have been fired and told, yes, there it is, you failed to perform, you did not deliver, you didn't add value, really, you have no use to the government and to the nation. Thank you. You can go home.
Mr. Luxson Zembe, who is a leadership and governance strategist, he was talking about performance contracts which were introduced by His Excellency the President to permanent secretaries, to ministers, as well as other top government officials. He has emphasized also the fact that, yes, we should be qualified, we should have good qualifications, but what is important in the world of work are results. So he talked at length about the integrated results-based management that is also based on NDS1. Thank you very much for coming to Economic Forum, Mr. Zembe.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the viewers. Hope you enjoyed it.
Yes.
Good night.
If you like to get in touch with us here on Economic Forum, you can do so on the numbers that are showing on your screen. And also, if you've missed some episodes, you can watch them on our YouTube channel, which is Economic Forum Zimbabwe. So on behalf of the production crew and Mr. Zembe here, this is John Masugu.